Hello, my wonderful friends and history seekers. Welcome back to my channel, where today we are stepping away from the digital noise and into the deep green soul of Vancouver Island. I have something truly special for you, a gem of the Pacific Northwest that has been breathing in this land since long before maps were drawn. Prepare to travel with me through the mist and time, straight into the heart of a nation that didn't just survive the elements, but learned to speak with giants of ice. Make yourself comfortable, adjust your screen, but above all, open your hearts, because we are about to meet the great white guardian of the Comox Valley. Come closer to the fire, my children, Grandma says, her voice mingling with the crackle of burning cedar and the freshest scent of pine. Long before treaties and cities, the Comox nation called this valley the land of plenty. They were and are masters of the sea, engineers of ancient fish wares, and poets of cedar wood. Through history saw them merge clans like the Satlot and Putlench to withstand human storms. Today, they walk with the pride of a hard-won treaty and self-governance. They are a people who know that true wealth is not what you keep, but what the land allows you to share under the eternal gaze of ancestors who became stone. Imagine now, with the warmth of these embers of your faces, a time when giant evergreen trees were cathedrals touching the shores of the Puntledge River. The big houses, made of cedar planks, stood like sentinels, with totem poles presiding over doorways like silent storytellers. Canoes lined the riverbank waiting for the water's kiss, while smokehouses sent prayers of salmon and clam-scented mist into the air. Thousands of voices spoke a language that mimicked the rustle of wind and the dip of a paddle. At night, the world was a velvet canvas, lit only by stars and the sparks of longhouse fires that promised refuge against the forest shadows. On just such a night, an old man named Qualak felt his soul drifting to a prophetic dream. A voice, deep as the ocean floor, whispered a warning that made his spring prickle. A disaster was coming, a dance of clouds that would have no end. When he woke, the echo of the command vibrated on his aged bones. It wasn't a simple fantasy of the mind, but a divine mandate from the spirit world. Without hesitation, with the urgency of someone who knows life hangs by silent thread, he ran into the lodge of Chief Gaye Janok to deliver the message the sky had entrusted to him. The chief listened to the old man with the reverence reserved for those who have seen winters pass. Qualak spoke of the rain that would fall without rest, a sky cry that would drown the valleys and erase the known paths. We must prepare, the old man said, for only hard work and faith in the dream's advice will keep us anchored to our own land. Chief Gaye Janok, knowing that to ignore the elders is to invite the great silence, decided to act. He called his people together under the moonlight, transforming their rising fear into a rhythmic dance of collective purpose and survival. The valley became a hive of industrious hands. Some built new canoes, their wood singing under rhythmic axe blows. Others gathered the strips of cedar bark, while women pounded them with the patience of artists until they were supple as leather. Qualak oversaw the waving of a monumental rope, kilometers of braided fiber that had to be strong enough to hold the destiny of an entire nation. There was no room for laziness. Every knot in that rope was a commitment to survival, a promise that tomorrow would still have a place in their ancient domain. Every finger worked until they were stained with the earth's own colors. Meanwhile, the scent of preserved abundance filled the air. Silver salmon were smoked, clams and cockles were dried, and deer meat was cured with the wisdom of those who know the bite of hunger. Young boys, leaving behind their games of the beach, learned to carve bailers, for they knew every drop of water outside the boat was a second more of life. People had to decide which treasures would take the precious space. Ceremonial dresses and rattles were packed first, for what is a people without their music and their rites? The spirit of cooperation wrapped the village like a warm, hand-woven blanket. And then, just as the last knot was tied, the sky closed like a heavy gray curtain. The clouds, pregnant with omens, began to pour their grief upon the valley. A group of the strongest, wisest young men undertook an epic trek to the top of the glacier that rose above them like a white crown. They carried the end of the great cedar rope, searching for the perfect spot to anchor it. Their choice was crucial, for the very heartbeat of their families depended on the choice made in the wind and snow. The first thunder rumbled, making the beginning of the great world-changing flood. The rain fell day after day, night after night, with a relentless insistence that seemed to want to wash the world clean of its history. The Pluntage River burst its banks, reclaiming the land and forcing everyone into their canoes. They attached themselves to the great cedar rope, a lifeline stretching towards the heights. Soon, the water rose above the totem poles, and the people watched with heavy hearts as their bent wood boxes and earthly possessions floated away. There was simply no room for things when souls were at stake. They clung to each other as the valley vanished beneath the rising tide. The emerald trees of the valley, and then even those of the mountainside, were swallowed by the rising gray. The world became a dismal place of water and sky, with no shore in sight. The canoes required constant, rhythmic bailing, and the children's laughter was replaced by the sound of splashing water and quiet prayers. They lived in a world of endless gray, where daylight and darkness were only different shades of gloom. The green grass and sandy beaches were now only memories, and a great, cold fear began to spread among the canoes like a winter chill that no fire could warm. As the flood water rose to the very spot where the young men had tied the rope, the people asked one another what would happen when the last piece of land disappeared. The day finally came when the glacier was almost entirely submerged, with only the topmost peak visible, like a white island in a vast, lonely sea. Chief Gaye Gia Yanok and his medicine man, Hahagelth, led the people in a final, desperate prayer. As their voices rose, something they had never dreamed possible began to happen beneath the dark waves. The world itself seems to hold its breath. The glacier, their glacier, suddenly took on a life of its own. It began to shift and float, lifting away from the mountain's embrace. With a sound like thousands crashing waves, it broke through the surface of the flood waters, breaching exactly like a giant whale. The water cascaded off its wide sides in foaming torrents, causing a massive commotion that tossed the canoes like autumn leaves. At first, the people were paralyzed by awe, but then, as the truth dawned on them, a cry went up that shook the sky. The glacier is a huge white whale. It is Queneesh, they began to chant. Queneesh, 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 as the mountain spirit transformed before their very eyes into a guardian of the deep. To add to their sudden joy, the relentless rain began to stop, the clouds breaking apart like old memories. For the first time in weeks, the sun teased the horizon with promise of gold. The people cheered, their voices echoing off the white skin of the whale glacier, and for the first time they slept deeply and comfortably in their canoes, cradled by the ancestor who had sacrificed its stillness to keep them afloat and alive. In the morning, the sun shone with a brilliance that made the world sparkle. The air was fresh, sweet, and filled with the scent of hope. Steam rose from their damp clothing as the warmth began to dry their belongings. Laughter, long forgotten, rippled from one canoe to another. The time of fear was over. The time of sitting silently in the dark had passed. They were safe, and they were still Comox. Plans for a giant celebration began to take shape even before their feet touched the mud of their home, for they knew the land would return to them soon. Queneesh had floated almost free of the mountain, but as the waters receded, he settled back into his ancient position. He returned to stone and snow, overlooking the Comox Valley once more, but now as a hero rather than a mountain. To this day, he is honored on the big houses of the Comox, a reminder of the night the ice learned to swim to save people. And if you listen closely to the elders today, you will still hear them whisper to the mountain, Qui, Laki, Ke, Queneesh. Thank you for a protection that never melts away. And so, as the campfire fades the glowing coals, we leave Queneesh watching over the valley. This story reminds us that even the floods of life seem to cover everything we love. There are ancient strengths, ancestors and legends waiting to keep us afloat if we only listen to the wisdom of those who came before. If you felt the magic of the Comox today, hit that like button and subscribe to join our circle. Your supports help these stories travel further than any cedar rope ever could. I'll be waiting for you right here for our next magic story from Canada. Sleep well and stay curious. See you later.